Welcome back, everyone, to Startup Security Weekly. That's right. We're talking about all things startup as it relates to security and sometimes just as it relates to startup and the startup mindset. I like that, the startup mindset, which Michael and I have our own startups that we're working on, which is interesting, and we'll update you on our journeys in just a little bit. Mike, what's the story? Front Series A deck.
I'm trying to remember where this floated across. I mean, Medium is good for finding stuff, but I don't actively hunt. This came across. We talk about on almost every single one of our programs how to make your pitch and how to be able to do it. So what I thought was interesting was this group Front, they got a $10 million Series A. That's pretty cool. And so to me, right, that's success. Now, where they'll go from here, I don't know. And to be fair, I didn't even check them out. I still couldn't tell you what they do, which I guess is not fair to them. But what I like is when somebody's willing to be somewhat open about the process. So they start out by saying, okay, so here's the deal. I spent time, right? And so these are the keys. I spent time building relationships with the VCs. Now, actually name names, which I was kind of impressed by. But what they said is, I knew whoever would invest in our A round would become our first board member. We'd have to work together for years. And since it's almost impossible, I'm paraphrasing, to get rid of a board member, I had to get to know them early. What did we talk about on last night's program? When you're selling, it's all about the relationships. When you're working with VC, it's all about the relationships. Yes, they're going to be on your board. That's about relationships. And I just want to make a quick comment on boards. And we'll have to do more on this in the future. Boards are about governance. Your company is about administration. Mm-hmm. There are two different parts to it, and a board may not always agree with you, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but right. Holy cow, can that be a frustrating thing?
I want to talk about this article as it relates to the actual company. This is a kind of a thing where I click my heels together and I go on the internet and I find the solution to my problem. And this is a problem that's been in the back of my mind for a while. And the main page of their website, this is frontapp.com, says the inbox for teams never drop the ball or duplicate work again. I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting, but I still don't know what you do. But if you scroll down, it says it brings all your external messages, email, Twitter, Facebook, chat, SMS, into one unified inbox. Oh, a lot of us have this problem. I have this problem. People communicate with myself and our business through all these different mechanisms. Maybe it's a Facebook chat. Maybe it's a Twitter direct message. Maybe it comes from LinkedIn. And so essentially what we've got today is 8 or 9 or 12 different inboxes that we have to go check. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a solution that brought it all into one place? Sounds like that's what this does, and that does not surprise me that based on that and that alone that they got the funding that they did, because that's a problem I have.
You know what I thought's funny is as you were describing that, I immediately thought, isn't that what Slack does? And right on their front page, we're integrated with Slack. Mm-hmm. Okay, apparently I don't understand the distinctions that well, but yeah, no, I think it's interesting. So here's the thing then too. She's laying out their numbers and where they were at, and hey, look, we had just reached 100K in MMR or MRR. We had a low churn. We had a clear roadmap. And I let somebody know that, and they said, okay, you know what? You've hit the threshold now. You should start coming to talk to us. And this is what I loved right here. This is the part that really made it to me. I spent 90% of my days working on the deck, gathering data, making projections, and constantly iterating based on investor feedback. 10 days later, we had 3 term sheets. Now, a couple things to this. And they pointed this out too. In fact, she continues, and I'll quote, "It might seem extremely fast, but I wasn't doing anything else for the company. With only 15 employees at the time, the drop in productivity was more than perceivable, so I optimized for a short process instead. And then I accepted one of the term sheets, stopped taking meetings, and got back to work." Okay, so before we get into the stuff that she did or didn't learn in this, which I think was also interesting, here's what I found really impressive about this. And I kind of did like a back of the napkin calculation. So if you busted on this for 10 days, first of all, you already had a deck in place. I don't know how long you spent on that. But if you spent 90% of your days working on the deck and you did 10 days, I don't know somebody in a startup working less than 12-hour days, especially at that point. Mm-hmm. So they're working that's basically 100 hours into this. 100 hours. I can't tell you how often. Now, remember, we did an interview on Security Weekly for somebody who'd done a TED Talk. And I said, how much time did you put into it? And her answer was about 300 hours for a 14-minute talk. Yep. That's why her talk was awesome. That's why she's respected for it. This person went and they got $10 million and they put at least 100 hours into it. And as they explained, we'd already been in building the relationships. We'd already been in business. We'd already been selling the product. We already knew the problem that we solved.
Yep.
I mean, they weren't jumping from zero here. They were already pretty good and put hundreds of hours into this, intensely focused, and then kept iterating on it based on everything that they learned. That's the model right there. Like I love
like
that part by itself.
I like how that puts it in perspective for everyone who is listening to this show, thinking about doing their own startup. That's a great guide.
Yeah, and I actually think, and it's the top highlight: raise or don't raise. Don't kind of raise.
Yeah.
Either
Right.
raise money or don't raise money. Right? It's the shit or get off the pot moment. But
Right.
but whatever you're going to do, do it. But it talks about building relationships, the caveats, talking about your metrics, and figuring it out. And then what I thought was interesting was then she broke down the slides and said, based on the investors' feedback, this is what they liked, this is what they didn't like, this is what I would have added. And my only flip answer to that is, yeah, but you got what you wanted. I mean, like, we can always talk about what a perfect deck looks like. What I like about this is it's a successful deck. So often, and we'll put them up. But so often we see these decks and go, this is the deck that raised, $1 billion quadrillion dollars, and so every deck should look like this.
No.
That's a horrible idea.
Because I was looking at them like, wow, they have 21 slides. Like, I wonder how many slides mine would have. And I'm like, that's going to be different for everyone. So don't use that as a guide. Don't say, well, I got to have like around 20 slides. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 30. Who knows?
I'll tell you what, I'll share something I've been working on with you, and if you like it, we'll share it with everybody in the next episode. But I've been kind of looking at how to tell the story better. Now, I've not been looking to pitch VCs. I'm looking at how do I help somebody better understand any topic, right? Because keep in mind, when I look at something from a communication perspective, I'll use it myself, because if it won't work for me, I'm pretty confident it won't work for anybody else. But now I'm starting to be mindful of, well, what will we guide people through? And you and I know we've looked at before. We've broken down how Musk does something versus how somebody else does it.
Yeah.
And people routinely point out to me that I don't like to follow convention because I find conventions largely broken. And so I've got, and it's funny because you know me well enough. I like 3s and 5s, and I don't have it in front of me, but I've either got 9 or 11 steps, and I'm like I got a little twitchy when I put it together. But I went, you know what? If you could give me a deck that answered these 11 questions, I'm in. Like, that's going to help. So I'll share it with you. And if you like it, we'll share it with everybody else. And maybe it'll be useful for them.
Well, yeah, and please do, because as you know, I maintain probably like 4 main decks for both the businesses. I'm curious to get your, there's the investor deck for offensive countermeasures, and there's the sales deck for offensive countermeasures. So that's 2 that primarily my responsibility that I am constantly updating. Like, I'm realizing that every week I should be evaluating, getting feedback from multiple places on whatever the topic is, and updating those decks. Then for Security Weekly, I have more, because I'm not really looking for investors, but I've got more of my internal communications decks that are helping setting strategy and culture within the organization. And then I've got my sales deck for Security Weekly. I'm finding that I spend a lot of time in all 4 of those decks all the time. They're never done. It's a moving thing, right? It's just basically. Do
you find that holds you back though? Or are you at the place where you're like, I know I'm going to keep making them better, but if it's better today than it was yesterday, it's good. Let's keep moving.
Yeah. I just, I look at it as I should be constantly updating and communicating my vision, and constantly updating and communicating the problems that we solve, from a sales perspective.
And I think that's healthy. And I think it's a good way to look at it, because, it's like I've finally adopted that myself. In fact, I wrote about it this week. I'm done trying to be the perfectionist, and I'm also done hiding some of the mess. I was always kind of like, you want to be that duck, calm and cool on top and crazy underneath. And what I've noticed is, when I let people into some of the crazy, now I don't mean all of it, it's all over the place, it's too big, what are you talking about? But when I say, hey, I don't have this completely polished out, but these are my key points, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think? People love being part of that process, and I find that that's really important. So that's the other thing too, is I like these decks, I like these guides, I think they make a lot of sense. I'm going to give you some of the things that I've been spending some time on to see what you think of it. And then let's use this too, because we talked about this last week, and I want to just let everybody know, I put some thought into this. and I need to share these notes with you too. And then we will get to the place where if you are a startup and you want to share your pitch with us, we're going to figure it out. We made it kind of like an offhanded, unstructured thing last week, and a few of you said, "Hey, I'm in. Let's do it." And I instantly went, "Yeah, wait, I'm sorry, hold on, we got to think this through a little bit better." And I don't mean that as a negative to anybody. So those of you who said you're in, cool. Well, we'll take a look at it. But what I thought was we could help people with it, but we need to kind of give them a little bit of structure. So either they're certainly free to use the Straight Talk framework, the free stuff, and that's good for me because I know it pretty intimately. But then we can also look at a couple of these other things. And what I'm kind of thinking is you and I can set up a way where people can submit their pitches, by video, and anybody can see them. So we can start to help the marketplace. And then we'll pick some that either appeal to us or that viewers kind of lift up and say, "Hey, what do you guys think of these?" And we'll break them down. And not to tear people apart. I will be very clear with that. I will have no part of tearing people down, but I'm happy to point out how people can elevate better. And then, we'll figure it out from there. So I got some ideas on some stuff we could do with that. Might be a little bit ancillary to some of the things we're doing here. But if people want to see what it's like for real, instead of just us talking about what we see in the news, I'm in. We'll do it. We'll pull it together.
The title for this article is throwing me through a loop. It says, you want to become more disruptive with your startup, you got 100 days. And then, you read the article, and I don't really relate it back to the title.
Nope,
I'm probably missing
thing.
A lot. Maybe am I missing something or no?
No, I mean, what I thought was interesting was, so there's kind of two parts to this, and this is why I like this particular story. And to your point, I didn't really understand the disruptive nature thing. I felt like there was a clickbait title.
Yeah, I agree.
Somebody must have pointed it out to me or sent it to me, and I apologize if I'm not attributing it to whoever sent it to me. But here's what's right in the second paragraph that I liked. In a recent survey of managers across 500 major U.S. companies, 67% admitted that their companies were too risk-adverse, with 82% saying they don't distinguish their approaches between long-term and incremental innovation. Well, one of the things that we've been talking about consistently on this program is that you can have that startup mindset. That doesn't have to exist only if you're running a startup. And so here we are saying, it's appealing to startups, but it's talking about what's happening in the enterprise. So I like that. But here's what jumped out at me, and it's their first one. Systems are more powerful than ideas. You like football. The teams, right? And in fact, you're a Patriots fan, and whether you like them or hate them, they're a powerhouse.
They got the system. That's a very good example of the system.
Well, I think football, Nick Saban has a system. You follow his system. I'm in South Carolina. It definitely looks like Dabo Sweeney's got a system, and you follow the system. But what I've started to study now a lot more is that effective leaders have systems. They systematize stuff. Now, there's a caveat, right? You can have a system that makes it harder for people to do their jobs and pisses them off and introduces friction. Or you can start to look for systems that make it simpler. And that was one of the big things that we stressed in the course I did over the summer was, if you want to be an effective leader, if you want to be an exceptional leader, you got to go pick powerful systems, and you got to follow the processes, and you got to put them together.
But also, Michael, does this make sense? The system has to align with the culture?
Absolutely. Well, yes, and if your culture, right? So when we talk about culture is both your appetite for change or your resilience to it, your capacity to do things, and then the structure. Right. And we always overlook the structure. Now, if I've got a system where culturally I'm not getting what I want, then I have to fundamentally change that. And one of the ways to do that could be with the system or the processes that I put in place.
I got you. Yeah, so it can influence aspects of the culture. Yeah, that makes sense.
But more salient to your question, they need to match up. Here's the thing, though. Most of us look at it and they go, wait, you want me to be innovative and disruptive, and you're saying I got to follow a system? That's nuts.
Right, yeah.
But this is the thing. It's the exact opposite. There are three primary colors. Crayola's got, you guys hear me say this all the time, Crayola's got boxes of hundreds, Pantone's got millions of colors. If your three constraints are red, green, and blue, red, yellow, blue, geez, I'm good with primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, then look, you can do a lot of stuff from it. So what's great about a system is a system takes away friction. Nothing kills innovation or value faster than friction. So to your point, right system implemented, followed right way, you take friction down. When you take friction down, you can unleash that innovation. we got to get over that mindset that it stops us.
Yeah,
So
I really relate that to a problem that we've talked about at length that I still think we have in information security, and that is working with the IT and the business to get your systems and applications patched and up to date, right? And the word friction, really, it rings home there, right? Because there's a lot of friction, because there's lots of people looking at it from a lot of different lenses, as you say, Michael. And I think to be innovative, you need a system that removes that friction, and then you can start talking about solutions that make everyone at ease, let them do their jobs, and achieve your goals of, one, running your business, and two, running it more securely because you're solving that fundamental problem of stuff's not patched.
Two quick comments on that. First of which is the antidote to friction is structure, always. Number two, what I loved in that description is the security is part of the business. I'm gonna have to write about this because I'm starting more and more to see again where they're like, well, if we could just get the business to stop. You are part of the business. If you're in an enterprise today, congratulations, you're part of the business. You don't exist separately, and you're describing that. Like, how do we work together to do this? Interestingly enough, the course this summer, use that as one of our course challenges, patch management, how to convince people. And I've been meaning to sit down and go through that with you. We'll make time. And then if we think that's useful, maybe we'll turn it into a webinar for people and they can pull some ideas off of it.
And in terms of security, I just wanted to hit my stories really quick. The first story, and these two, read them in order, 1 and 2 in the show notes. And the first one comes from Fox News. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Whatever you think of them, pretty much throw it out the window. Because,
but it's also sourced out through entrepreneur.com and a guy that writes for it. So
exactly. And this guy's on point. I really like this article. When I saw the title and I started reading it, I'm like, here we go. This is going to be terrible. And then I read it and I'm like, holy crap. Like, these are pretty much the 7 things that myself and probably the rest of us here at the Security Weekly staff, the brilliant people that we have here, would more than likely say much of the same thing. And this really relates to the IT operations of your startup, not your product security, which is fine. That's a good discussion for the future shows. But this says insist on access management from the start. And the one part I liked about this is not everyone needs to be an admin for everything. And if you do that from the beginning, you're going to be in much better shape. If you start practicing the privileged identity management and identity access control from the beginning, as you grow, that process is going to become so much more
Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, absolutely.
And you've studied that sector more than I have. So
I got a story coming out on this in about 2 weeks too. Let me point out something else though too, because you said this is more about running your startup, not necessarily about your product. Think about that though. If you design that principle into your product, aren't you further ahead than everybody else?
Nope, you're absolutely right.
I think it does apply.
Yeah. Enable 2-factor authentication. I think that... I don't know. I think this is a big deal now. I think that 2-factor authentication is much more accessible today.
Isn't it almost table stakes?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I don't think enough people are using it.
So then flip it around. If you're offering a product today, you're a startup, you're an IoT, or whatever.
Gotta have 2-factor authentication in it.
Make sure I can flip it on, period.
Yep. Password manager is huge.
Good fan.
I'll admit a fault on this one. I didn't implement a password manager when we first started Security Weekly. 11 years ago, they weren't as popular as they are now. They weren't as
11
advanced.
years ago, you basically had KeyPass or KeyPass Act.
They weren't as advanced as they are now, or resilient. So now we have the problem where we have to go implement one, and now that's a cultural change. That's a process change. It's a much bigger deal now. So doing the beginning is definitely great. Use the phone.
That's the understated.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, no, that's good. So if you're sharing a password or some kind of access to something, don't send it in a clear text email.
Yeah, and it also says too, like, if you're not certain about it, pick up the phone and call. Let me just relate a story that happened recently at one of the events I was at. Guy came up to me afterwards and he said, "Hey, I've been building my awareness program, and I want to tell you something that happened. I had somebody call me. They thought that something wasn't right, And I said, okay, how did it resolve out? Well, I advised them to follow up and said, hey, the guy works in accounting. Just pick up the phone and call him. Mm-hmm. Person called.
Yeah.
It was a non-work related email, nothing tawdry, just the person, it was out of character. So her reaction to it was proper. But the solution was
Pick up the phone.
The phone.
Email encryption, I think, is important, which, again, is something that I think technology, we've been kind of, hindered in that area. I don't know if it's necessarily all that much better today. The article states GPG Tools works great for Mac unless you're on Mac OS Sierra, which isn't yet supported. And that's a frequent occurrence. Full disk encryption is definitely something you should do. The last one was the only one that I'd be like, yeah. I mean, don't, use a VPN, don't access public Wi-Fi. I know that a lot of security companies have very strict policies that, in fact, one company that I'm very close with has a strict company policy that their employees are never allowed to connect to anyone else's Wi-Fi, and they've issued every single employee their own 4G Wi-Fi hotspots. So whenever they're away from the office, they don't connect to anyone else's Wi-Fi.
So go back to the comment before on culture and structure. I can issue that policy, and I can guarantee you that policy will be avoided.
Yes.
I issue the policy, and I say, it's so important to me. Each of you has your own hotspot now, and I will cover the cost of that. Oh, so you're pretty serious about that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It changes it.
You have to follow it up. You have to follow it up with an alternate method that works.
I think this was that point that you throw in because you really like saying, don't lose your IP over a latte. I'm so artful. Listen to how artful I am. And,
So then,
take us through the other listicle, the top 5 strategies.
Yeah, Founder's Guide published one, and it basically says, create a data security policy, become data security experts, password protect all sensitive data, lock down your Wi-Fi, and avoid using public cloud solutions. This is not great advice at all. And there's only like a sentence or two after each one. Not great advice. Not as good of an article, in my opinion. I think that you absolutely have to use public cloud solutions. In fact, I think your security of your operation, startup or otherwise, can benefit by using public cloud solutions. And when you use public cloud solutions, follow everything in the first article in those 7 steps. And guess what?
Good.
You can use them with a higher degree of security. I'm not going to say that's going to prevent you from getting hacked in all circumstances, but you're going to be in much better shape security-wise, even if you use public cloud solutions. If you use Google Mail for Business, or what do they call it? G Suite or whatever. G Suite. If you use GPG or some kind of PGP encryption for your email, great. That solves some of the security and privacy issues there. If you enable 2-factor authentication, that certainly increases your security. So there are some 2 great tips on how to use a public cloud solution securely.
I like it. Yeah, this, and so let's try to turn some of this into a positive, because I started going down this list, and I'm glad you said read them in order, because I did. Create a data security policy. I don't even know what the hell that means anymore.
Yeah.
Look, I'm being flippant. I've created policies for years, but the point is that's your lead out. So you're saying to a startup that's working 12-hour days, 6 days a week or longer.
Create a policy.
Here's first thing I want you to do: create a data security policy. First of all, if anybody thought that was actually good advice, they're just going to go cut and paste it from the internet, slap it in. They don't have it. Become data security experts. Congratulations, you just joined the rest of the field. And then you're going to password protect data, lock down your Wi-Fi by hiding your SSID. Yeah. All right. So basically, what we're saying is be weary of the advice that you get in different places, because security is important. So I take the plus that people are saying, hey, you got to do something about security. And in that case, you should come engage with us.
Yes.
And ask us your questions. Send us your challenges. If you're the startup watching this and you say, no, I don't really sure about what I need to do, talk to us. I mean, look, minimally, I'll give you 25 minutes. We'll talk on the phone. I'd love to hear what you're up to. And then, we'll protect you, but we'll talk about it, because those are the right questions.
The last one I thought was very interesting. This company rakes in millions and still hand writes thank yous every day.
This whole story captivated me. This is going to be one of the rare times I'm going to say, if you go to our show notes and read the links and follow up on it, this is the one I would do. I found this one. I think it popped up somewhere on Facebook, and I sat and I watched the video of this guy, and it's just absolutely fascinating. He was looking for a way to create better things for being outdoors and being rugged, and he couldn't get the stuff he wanted, so he said, screw it, I'll do it myself. But he's been transparent about it with people. He takes them on live streams. He answers their questions. He writes handwritten notes to people. He stands behind his stuff. That's unbelievable. And so you look at that, and then what struck me was people go, well, I mean, that's easy to do when you're small. The 5-year-old company is on track to do $50 million in sales this year.
Good for him.
Okay, so one of the things that I took from this that I really kind of liked was it starts with that first customer. Mm-hmm. The way that you treat that person, the way that you engage with them, you can carry that forward. That's going to do it. And like I looked through this, I was like, you know what? I used to do handwriting stuff all the time. I still do. I need to get back to that. I mean, like there's some touches that say to somebody, okay, you're important to me. I'm going to do the right stuff. I'm going to show you what the process is like. I'm going to share with some of my struggles. And those of you that are behind me, we're going to get through it together. And I'm going to reward you for that. And we're all going to be better because of it. I love that as a model. I think that's a great way to be.
I agree. Updates on our journeys, Michael.
Quick one for me. We wrapped up the first cohort. And as I've said now a couple times, I am so grateful for my advisors that kept kicking me in the back and telling me to do it. I'll lay out something I thought was really fascinating. The biggest lesson I've learned was online training. The reason I didn't like it was it's consumption focused. And what I struggled on was how do I build it into experience? And we figured it out. And by figuring it out, now it means I have to add a lot of coaching into it. And so go back to what we just said. If the way that I can elevate you is we spend 25 minutes on the phone together every week for 6 weeks. And I got to tell you, anybody who asked for more time got it. Yeah, there was no problem. So I'm going to do the second cohort of that. Based on the way I'm doing it, there's only about 15 spots. 2 just got taken, so I got 13 left. If you're watching this show, you're VIP. And it's got rolled for startup. There was some misconception. I'm going to clean it up. People said, oh, Straight Talk's just about communication. Straight Talk is a framework. It's a mechanism to take friction out of the process of communication and other stuff so you can make better decisions faster. And then because of that, I actually listen to customers and people say to me, it'd be great, Michael, could you help me solve a problem? I went, yeah, all right, well, apply it. And now I've got some neat ways to be able to do that. And I just got really energized. So we'll talk about it later, but I just put out some updates. Paul, I'm going to revamp my homepage. I'm going to put together a 7-part video series on how to actually use the questions and answer the Straight Talk framework stuff. And based on this course, I gave people some information in there that I've been working on for the last decade, and they were very appreciative and supportive of it, and basically said, you should give some of this away. I'm going to. It's going to go up on my website. No gates, no filters, no tricks. Video series we're episode 12, by episode 14, 15, it'll be totally up on how to negotiate value, intrinsic value, communication, structured communication, all that stuff, because that's how we're going to start elevating the industry. So if you're a startup and you're playing with this stuff, or you're in enterprise, feel free to check that out, and then, we'll make it better. How about you?
John and I were on Enterprise Security Weekly yesterday, and I made a plea with the security vendor community to put a button on their website that says, I just want to know how it works. And when you click that button, it gives you a somewhat technical description of how the product works. Because we're so frustrated reading about all of these things that security vendors say they can do and not really understanding how it works. And so John heard that and said, you know what? We're going to lead the charge. We're going to put that on our website, and we're going to give you a page that tells you how it works. I love it. I think it's a medium technical kind of level is kind of what we're going to shoot for. So that's one of the interesting things that that we kind of call out. The other thing is we have an awesome demo now. The demo's come a long way. I haven't been updating some of the decks for sales because I've been focusing a little bit more on the tech and a little bit more on delivering a really solid demo, which we have made a lot of progress. Still a little more work to do in that area to make it a little more dynamic and support some different formats. But the demo that we have now is super awesome. So sales@offensivecountermeasures.com if you're interested. John is actually traveling for the next couple of weeks, which will be interesting. But I'll be here and happy to do a demo for anyone who's interested. So
that's awesome. That's really awesome. I love that idea. I just want to know how it works. I think that's great.
Oh, God. Reading the vendors' websites is extremely.
But think about that too. Just even as a startup, how does it work? But now, what's interesting is, all right. So we'll pick this up next week because what I want to understand is, so medium technical level, I like it. We'll use you guys as a model, and then I'm already running through my head. Can I do the same thing? So the mistake I made, because I have one that says, here's how the Straight Talk framework works. That's on my website. I made it so feature heavy that I get a bunch of calls that say, cool, I get how it works. That's awesome. How the hell do I use it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the website should convey like the problems that you solve and the area that you're in. And once you get that, your next, at least the way my brain works, the next logical question for me is, okay, well, like, how does it go into the network? Who uses it? And like, what kind of stuff do I get out of it? And how do I get that stuff out of it? And then what do I do with that stuff? Right? Like, there's a pretty basic set of questions that answer like how it works. And
listen,
oftentimes, you got to be on the phone or a WebEx with the vendor to understand that. And I found that we're in a similar situation. Like, you don't really get to see all of that until you get us on the phone. And I'm like, why can't we just say that in our website? Like, we're not giving away any trade secrets here.
Yeah,
it's not that deep technical level. Like, we're not putting our source code to our proprietary stuff on there, but we're telling you how it works. Like, it's a thing that goes on your network that sniffs traffic, and then it takes that and it puts it here, and it gives you the ability to do this.
So let's do this. Since we talk about this all the time on the program, first of all, anything you need from me, you got it. I'll help you.
Thank you.
Second of all, put some metrics around, or put some measurement around how long it takes, and how many iterations do you feel like you get it right? Because I think it's going to be a good benchmark for other people. But I love it, and I love the fact that you guys are leading the way on that. That's pretty jazzed up. I dig that, man. That's really awesome.
Well, thank you everyone for watching and listening to Startup Security Weekly. Michael, thank you as always. It was tons of fun as usual, and we'll see you on the next episode of Startup Security Weekly.